Next up, can I invite Joe Rigby, please, from University of Chester and Kendal Museum.
Hi, thanks very much, NATSCA, for organising today and for welcoming me to Belfast, everybody that's been involved in putting this together. My name's Joe. I'm a lecturer in sociology at the University of Chester and by accident became extremely interested in the natural history collection at Kendal Museum, which is the town where I kind of grew up and went to school. I am a new-ish member of NATSCA. I joined last year, having attended the conference in Manchester, and it was reading, in particular, Miranda Lowe and Subrandra Das's fantastic article, Decolonising Natural History Collections, and attending the conference last year that really made me believe that there was something worthwhile in pursuing. And the kind of what I'm going to talk about today is the kind of result of being encouraged by NATSCA and all the work that you've been doing. So thanks very much for all that you've done. I think you guys are much better at taking seriously social, political history, colonial histories, global South narratives than my discipline, sociology, is at taking seriously natural science. So I think you're doing a great job. What I'm going to talk about today is the work that I've been doing in collaboration with Kendal Museum and more latterly the Nandi community of Western Kenya. In the summer of 2023, I visited the museum for the first time with my two young children and became aware of the many connections between one of the kind of primary benefactors of and donors to the museum in the 20th century and the Nandi community of Western Kenya. Museum curators and staff weren't aware of these connections at the time, and I've since been able to make contacts with members of the Nandi community in both Kenya and currently living in the UK, and they were also kind of unaware of the kind of connections between our museum's benefactor and the story of kind of colonial violence and dispossession that I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to sort of talk about that kind of process of kind of discovery and learning and making a connection, and hopefully along the way sort of trying to draw some broader lessons for the ways in which working with natural history collections at smaller provincial museums like Kendal potentially bring a lot of opportunities for kind of reconnecting communities which might have previously been connected through colonialism but might be unaware of or poorly informed about their shared past. And in this case, I'm talking about communities in the UK or in the West or global North, more in that respect. So maybe the picture here is a picture of the World Wildlife Gallery in Kendal Museum, which is the kind of scene which you're kind of greeted with when you kind of arrive at this the museum. And as you can sort of see around the kind of upper part of the gallery, there are many taxidermy animal heads, or so-called hunting trophies. And so it was when I kind of visited the museum with my kids, as they were kind of running around, looking amazed at the thylacine and fantastic preserved moths and butterflies from around the world, that I was drawn to the kind of gilded initials on all of these trophy heads, gilded in kind of golden writing, EGH. And my first kind of thought was well, who was this person, this EGH, and what else was he doing when he was shooting all these animals? The kind of existing interpretation panel on the museum wall told me that the majority of these animals were shot by somebody called Edgar Garston Harrison, who was from a small village outside of Kendal. Kendal, sorry, is in Cumbria, small town in the northwest of England near the Lake District. Sort of Harrison kind of he said the existing interpretation board said the following thing. It said Harrison is described as a big game hunter and professional soldier who amassed a large collection of trophies during many years abroad in Kenya, Uganda, Somaliland, and the Sudan. And, you know, there's actually much greater kind of global connections tying Kendal to the rest of the world than just these places mentioned on the initial interpretation panel. Harrison trained as a soldier in Ireland in 1885. There's a significant number of collections from North America, where he was living with his brother on a ranch in Wyoming, near the border of Canada. And there are animals shot in the Himalayas, in India, and so on. And so this kind of this natural history collection tells a story of British imperialism and the connection between a small town in the northwest of England and this kind of web of imperial relations. So this was the kind of my starting point. And so I went away and sort of tried to research a little bit more about what Harrison was doing, in particular in Eastern Africa, because that was what the interpretation panel said. And it didn't take me long to, sorry, I've got a little hand on the screen here. It says not hearing anything. I think people online maybe can't hear, but anyway. It didn't take me long to find an article from the London Gazette commending Harrison for his role in the suppression of an indigenous resistance movement, the Nandi resistance movement, who for 10 years fought what's now celebrated as the kind of most organized early resistance movement to British colonization and rule. So this is a letter from W.H. Manning, the Inspector General of the King's African Rifles, commending Harrison for his deserving of special mention for the skillful manner in which he has planned and carried out the operations to a successful conclusion. His knowledge of natives and of native methods of warfare has contributed greatly to the success achieved. And so, you know, I started to think, well, there's probably more significance to this story than the existing interpretation panels have let on. And so, yeah, when I started to look for like Kenyan or Nandi accounts of this confrontation between British colonial forces and the Nandi people, the first thing that I came across was dozens of newspaper stories, YouTube videos, you know, popular accounts of the 19th of October commemorations, which take place every year in Nandi County, which sort of celebrate the resistance movement led by a particular individual called Koitaleo Samoei, who was killed by British forces on the 19th of October, 1905, sorry. And this is a picture of the current kind of governor of Nandi County, Stephen Sang, visiting the Koitaleo Samoei mausoleum on the 120-year commemoration of this resistance movement last year. So yeah, this is the kind of things that you kind of start to find out about when you start to look for alternative accounts or accounts coming from this community themselves. I then found some excellent journalism written by Jacqueline Ashley and a book written by a descendant of Koitaleo Samoei called Kipchoge Arap Chomu, The Life and Times of Koitaleo Samoei. And this picture that I started to understand about this kind of confrontation and these relationships was a much different one from the one presented in the museum. I found that Harrison had arrived in Eastern Africa in 1895, the year that the British started building the Kenya to Uganda railway to connect up Kenya and Uganda, which was also declared a quote-unquote British protectorate in 1895. The British brought 30,000 workers at least from British-controlled India to work on the construction of this railway under really kind of brutal and harsh conditions. 2,500 workers are recorded as dying, 25,000 injuries, and you know these statistics are definitely kind of underestimates. They didn't record the deaths of African labourers and so on. According to the Kenyan and Kikuyu playwright, philosopher, and anti-colonial activist Ngui wa Thiong'o, the railway was a decisive event in the history of modern Kenya in helping shape the racist three-tier structure of colonial Kenya, which he describes in the following terms, with whites as first class, Indians as second class, and Africans as third class. It also helped popularize this railway, helped popularize this practice of big game hunting and safaris. There's a picture of Teddy Roosevelt on the bench of the a bench of a rail engine. People would shoot animals directly from the railway themselves, if they were privileged people like Roosevelt. The railway was advertised as, providing access to a land where you could have, farming and hunting and so on. Harrison himself was granted some 5,000 acres of land around Gilgil after he retired from the army. And then, it was such a success in popularizing this kind of practice of hunting that, one account from 1928 lamented the loss of big game around the railway tracks as a result of the success. The Nandi account of this process is a much different one. Okay, the Nandi history suggests that this, starts the history of this. This history starts with a prophecy attributed to the Nandi Ogoyot Kimyole, who prophesied the coming of an iron snake, which would bring terror and destroy the Nandi's way of life. The son of this prophet, Koitalel Samoi, then organized this 10-year resistance movement. By 1905, the British had organized 5 major military operations and deployed 6 smaller armed patrols in the area. And Harrison was placed in command of one of the largest of these operations, the Nandi Field Force, on the 26th September 1905. It was during this operation, the 1905 Nandi Field Force, that Koitalel Samoy was killed by an English soldier serving under Harrison's command. The soldier was called Richard Meinertzhagen, who was a famous ornithologist and natural history collector himself. The Nandi account also suggests that when people returned to the site of the killing of Koitalel, his body was found missing a head. As Kipchoge writes in his book, many Nandi histories say that when the Nandi returned to the site of the 19th of October massacre, they found Koitalel's head was missing. Many therefore believe that the British decapitated Koitalel and kept his head. Now, this is a disputed point of history. The prominent African historian David Anderson suggests it's something of an imperial myth. The Nandi popular account that you can read about suggests that this is an important part of the story of colonial violence. I'm in no position to arbitrate between these two people, but I was sat in the World Wildlife Gallery surrounded by decapitated animal heads. And so I thought there was something to this story. I then set about looking to see if the museum had any human remains from Eastern Africa, which it didn't have, and if it had any items of Nandi cultural heritage. There were no recorded items in the social history section attributed to the Nandi or to people from Eastern Africa. I was given access to the social history store, however, and on the top shelf of the kind of store were these 3 musical instruments. They were recorded as untraced finds at the time, but I did find a record in the natural history collection of a donation of 3 horns from Edgar Garston Harrison, and the location of these horns was recorded as unknown in the Kendal Museum modes entry. There was a tag attached to one of these instruments which said on display in Annex in 1983, and the Annex is the name given to this World Wildlife Gallery, which was paid for by Harrison. I spoke with both the natural and social history curators, and they said it was actually plausible that what happened was that these items were donated by Harrison, displayed in the Natural History Gallery, and then when it was reorganized in 1983, taken out of the Natural History Gallery and stored in the Social History collection without those records being carried over. So we have this kind of like material kind of trace of this kind of colonial epistemology that separates kind of nature and culture, with the result that these the kind of object histories of these kind of 3 items have been lost. I showed the pictures to my contacts in Nandi County, and the curator of the Koitalel Samoy Mausoleum, Francis Talam, identified the 3 instruments as likely originating from the Nandi Moi clan, who were historically associated with the production of these instruments. You can see a similar instrument probably made from the horns of a kudu antelope, which the Nandi call Iriagit or Igondit. It's a war-gathering horn. You can see a picture from A.C. Hollis's book, The First piece of colonial anthropology written about the Nandi, which depicts a Nandi warrior blowing a kudu horn, and the photograph is taken by Richard Meinertzhagen, the soldier responsible for the killing of Koitalel Samoy. So these instruments have now been moved onto public display in Kendal Museum, along with some accompanying interpretation that kind of try to sort of tell this story, or try to ask the question how we should relate to this history and what we should do with these instruments. I'm now in the process of working with people in Nandi County and with the museum to prepare the ground for a visit to the museum from a delegation from Nandi County, and to hopefully return these instruments to their rightful place. I've got to stop. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. That was really interesting. And Joe is too modest to tell you that he has an article in the current Natska Journal, and I've read it, and it's really great, and it goes into this story in more detail, so you can find out more there. But in the meantime, if anybody has any questions on this topic to ask of Joe, please do speak now or catch him later.
So there are lots of these galleries and exhibitions in lots of museums in the country. And many of them are not curated by natural historians as well. So having the support from somebody from the social sciences is really interesting. How would you recommend they start work on reinterpreting these collections? And have you got any resources that you would recommend for this?
Thanks very much. Yeah, I mean, this is the point I never got to say the kind of things related to that point. So thanks for asking the question. There's likely dozens, hundreds, thousands of items of unrecorded Indigenous heritage across small museums across the UK. Yeah, and there's also now, for researchers in the UK, it's much easier to become aware of campaigns for justice and cultural restitution, which means that you can find out about the demands that have been made by the Nandi people today for the return of their heritage, to search for the missing remains of Koitalel Samoy, for the return of land which is stolen in 1905 as a result of Harrison's activities. These are still kind of tea and coffee plantations in Western Kenya, and so yeah, I think the opportunity that there is, particularly with smaller museums, is that you can connect up these communities in ways which interestingly kind of bypass these kind of national discussions, complexities around, politicians that want to be associated or not associated with reparations and restitution. The people of Kendal are really interested in this story. The people I've met from Nandi County are really keen to engage and connect. And I think there's a lot of opportunities to connect up people in ways which kind of bypass these kind of state relations in interesting ways. Cumbria is famous for fell running, and my friend Saroni, his picture up there, he says that he's going to bring some Kenyan runners to lose in a race against a fast Cumbrian up a slippy hill. Sorry, I don't know if that answered the question.
We've got a minute left if there was one more question. Oh, is there two? I can only see one hand. You choose, Emma. Who's closest to you? Because we're short on time. To the highest bidder. And we can, please do speak to Joe after this or throughout the next day or two. Thank you.
I thought really amazing. I just have I work in engagement, and I'm curious that a lot of that story about I'm curious about how you shared it more widely across museums and house teams, people that are engaging every day, what's going in the collection of that.
Thanks very much. I wish we could do more. I mean, at the moment, there's just some printed out boards that are attached to the existing galleries. It's a very under-resourced museum. The higher education college that currently manages it wants to give up management of it next year. West London Furnace Council is, it's in the red. So we basically just don't have any resources. We have applied for some support from the Esme Fairbairn Foundation. So if we get that, then there's lots of stuff we'd like to do. And it'd be great to chat to you about ideas in that respect. But at the moment, it's just some printouts, I've given talks at the museum, to local history societies. I'm hopefully going to go and speak to the school in Staveley, where this guy's from, talk about natural history and Western Kenya and stuff. So yeah, thanks very much.
Okay, everybody, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much, Joe. That was wonderful.